Welcome to the Stories Told podcast. This is episode 28, Farewell to Stargate. This is the Stories Told podcast. Two authors talking about stories in movies, TV, and of course, books.
I'm Michael Grayford. I write action-adventure stories in fantasy and sci-fi worlds, sometimes for younger readers and sometimes for adults. And I try to always inject at least a little bit of humor.
And I am author E.W. Barnes, and I write action-adventure, time travel novels, and space opera science fiction. Thousands of years, thousands of worlds. But be forewarned, beyond here, there will be spoilers. Are you ready for the adventure? Let's begin. Welcome back to the Stories Told podcast. I am author E.W. Barnes. With me is author Michael Grayford. And today we're talking about the stories told in a most and least favorite episode of Stargate SG1 Season 10, which is the last season for this series. And those episodes are The Pegasus Project and Uninvited. How are you doing today, Mike?
Oh, hi, I'm doing great, thank you. How are you?
Doing very well. Thank you very much. And what is going on in your writing world this week?
See, in the writing world, nothing too exciting, sort of the standard things I've been doing of late, like quoting my Vela stories on Amazon's Kindle Vela program, still editing the first Zara story. Hopefully that will be wrapped up today. And then there'll be some technical things, putting it back into Scrivener, which is the program that I write in. So I don't know how long that will take. Hopefully it goes smoothly. And then soon we'll be figuring out the launch plan for Zara for the ebook and paperback. I don't have that yet, but I have notes. So again, hopefully that goes quicker than I think it will. I never know. But yeah, that's it. That's where I'm at. Everything else has been pretty much on hold for the time being. How about you? What are you on?
So it's sort of all Zara all the time.
Yeah, I kind of want to wrap it up. At least get it to the point where I can push it out. I want to do an ARC phase where I have some advanced review copies sent out to people. So it'll probably be in their hands for a little bit, and I'll be inactive for a while on that and continue on either the Deep Dark or Zara 2. But for now, I just want to wrap it up.
And again, if people are curious about getting these advanced reader copies, which is what ARC stands for, they can sign up for your newsletter on your website and then message you about being part of your ARC team. Is that right?
Yeah, that would be fine. That would work.
Perfect. In my writing world, I actually finished the chapter of my fantasy story. It's called Roses in a Ring, and it's epic fantasy. And I've been kind of fiddling with a chapter, and I've decided I'm going to be done with this. And I actually I've decided to make it available on Patreon at the VIP level. So if anybody wants to see the draft development of that story, and it's very, very rough. I mean, it is so rough because I don't have character development done yet. I don't have plot development done. I just sort of jumped in and started writing the story because I had an idea that I wanted to start working on. So if somebody wants to follow along on that journey, they can do so on Patreon, and I'll put the link in the show notes. And then I also started writing another chapter in Ecliptic. Got some good work done on that already today. We'll do some more later today. So that is going to be moving along. Got more chapters, audio chapters edited and updated, published onto YouTube. So those are available. That's the second book in my time travel series that I am currently working on getting the audiobook chapters up. And once the chapters are completed, I've got the full audiobook up, then I will take all those chapters and merge them into one long form audiobook. So folks can either listen chapter by chapter, or they can wait for the long form audiobook, which will come out shortly after I finish. I'm expecting to be finished with that book probably by the end of August, or real close to the end of August. I think that's everything.
Oh, that's exciting. Lots going on. It's very, very brave of you to put your work in progress out there for people.
And some people like to see how the sausage is made. Christopher Tolkien, who is J.R.R. Tolkien's son, he published multiple books of all the drafts that Tolkien created. And it's fascinating to see how the stories and the worlds developed from initial conception to what was included in the books to even afterwards as he continued to refine his ideas of what Middle-earth was about. It's absolutely fascinating. Some people really enjoy that. Now, do I think that I am Tolkien worthy? No. But still, somebody might find the process interesting, and if they do, they're welcome to see it.
Absolutely, yeah. It is cool to see the different phases that work will go through. We talked about this somewhat before with Star Wars, or like how it went through different drafts and characters changed and all that stuff. So yeah, that's great.
We'll see what happens. And have you encountered any interesting stories in the last week in books, movies, TV?
The last week, I've mostly been watching additional Stargate SG1 episodes since we've been going through this. I wanted to give seasons 9 and 10 a more thorough look at and sort of another chance. When I first watched these when they were coming out, I wasn't too thrilled with the Ori episodes and that storyline. And so I wanted to see that again. And I think a large part of it was, when I first watched it, I was expecting it to be like 2 or 3 episode kind of story that, they kind of wrapped up. But obviously it went on through both of the final seasons. And this time going through, I realized that I didn't look at it the right way. And I hadn't understood that this was the global threat replacement for the Goa'uld and the Replicators. This was like their next big enemy threat. Of course, it was going to go over many more episodes than just 2 or 3. So now looking at it, that mindset, I'm enjoying it a lot more as I go through this time.
It's a shame because Stargate SG1 was canceled after season 10. And I think it's because, when they shifted from O'Neill to Mitchell, I think a lot of people really missed O'Neill. And they didn't really get a chance to get to know Mitchell because 2 seasons just doesn't really do it. It would have been ideal. Of course, as we've discussed before, I don't think they knew they were going to do this until they did it. But it would have been really ideal if we had been introduced to Mitchell earlier on and we had sort of developed a relationship with him as kind of a recurring character before he then took over for O'Neill. I think that would have made the transition easier for people.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But it's hard to do that if you don't know it's coming.
I think they tried to give us, backstory, right, as the series progressed. We see like him fighting over Antarctica, and then we get more with him in the memory machine where, we see his father and things like that happened in the past. So they tried their best to sort of catch us up on who this character is, but I think you're right.
Yeah.
Wasn't as successful maybe as it could have been. Watching it through again now too, I almost feel like his writing is very O'Neill. Like things that they have him say is like I could see O'Neill saying that. It's like they kind of try to carry that character through with Mitchell a little bit. Maybe it would have been better to make him more unique. I don't know. I mean, it's still enjoyable to me. Obviously, he came over after they canceled Farscape, so he had a full-time job prior to him coming into here.
A couple of things that I have been watching are watch the season finale of Star Trek Strange New Worlds. It was a cliffhanger, and we're going to have to hang for quite a while now to find out what happens next because with the writer's strike and the SAG-AFTRA strike, who knows when they're going to get back into the recording.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
We may be waiting a while to find out what happens as we're hanging on our cliff. But it is what it is. And I've also started rewatching Loki season 1 in anticipation of season 2 coming out in October. And so I've actually just finished watching this week the opening episode, the first episode of season 1. And it still holds together. Tom Hiddleston is a good actor, a really good actor. And the detail that is in this series, at least again, as I'm refreshing my memory for this first episode, I was just like, wow, there's just so much going on here.
Yeah, I mean, we'll talk about this more as we get to those episodes, probably. But I like what they did with the TV show. They didn't stick to the movie formula necessarily for all of the shows. They kind of tried different things. It was fun. It was fun to see different types of stories and different weird things that they tried. I thought that was a good decision rather than just making Marvel movies as a series.
Yeah, I agree. Are you ready to talk about Stargate SG1 Season 10?
I am. Let's get going.
Let's begin. Let's start with the story told in a most favorite episode of Stargate SG1 Season 10, the Pegasus Project. And I'm going to go ahead and read from the Stargate fandom wiki the synopsis of this episode. A clue for the Sangral leads SG-1 to Atlantis. While Dr. Daniel Jackson and Vala Maldoran search through the Atlantis database, Lieutenant Colonel Samantha Carter, Lieutenant Colonel Cameron Mitchell, and Dr. Rodney McKay plan to use a Stargate and a black hole to block the Supergate and prevent the Ori from dispatching more ships. So what did you like about this episode?
Oh, there's a lot I liked in this episode. First of all, it was satisfying to see Neil Jackson finally get to go to Atlantis. The culmination of his character desire from the beginning of the series almost. To see this thing in action, I thought that was great. And it was fun to see both groups together, the SG-1 and the Stargate Atlantis team. Obviously, at this point, they'd spun off and had the Atlantis show going for a little bit. So it was good to see those two groups come together and to see their interactions. I liked what they did with the holographic interface, how the woman who was there teaching was actually an ascended ancient. I thought that was very clever. And the way that they revealed that was really good, with Daniel Jackson actually figuring it out. That's what I like. I like when the character has something to do, they have agency, and they use their minds to solve problems, or in this case, not necessarily so much a problem as he realized something wasn't right, and he figured that out. So I like that they revealed it in that way. I love that they brought things together from past episodes into this episode, right? The physics from the black hole episode, how the gate got stuck open and then they had to do an explosive charge and shoot it to another gate. And they actually use that for a solution here against the Ori. I thought that was great. They never would have thought of that otherwise, had they not gone through that before. So I like that they bring that back as a solution. I liked how they set up with Atlantis trying to get a message to the Odyssey through Teal'c, but Teal'c himself had to remain hidden from the approaching Ori. So those are great complications, and it involved the two. I guess they weren't two different storylines. They're working toward the same goal, but in two different parts of the universe. So I thought they handled that really well. I love that they had the Ori, the Ancients, and the Wraith all in one episode. Sort of all these things kind of coming together. I think a lot of the really, really good episodes that we've watched have done that, have kind of brought things from the past and brought all these different factors to a head in one episode or a pair of episodes. And this was one of those things that they did that well, I think. I like that they showed Merlin, who had appeared in an earlier episode. We get to see him on the holographic display. I thought that was kind of cool. They're sort of keeping him in mind. And then, like they said, they blew up an Ori ship, a Wraith ship at the same time. Well done. And then I like that we got a better understanding of why the Ascended Ancients don't get involved in the affairs of the mortals, right? Because there's a risk that they could end up becoming like the Ori. That was brilliant. A great reason behind something that was kind of in the background. I think as viewers, we kind of felt like Daniel Jackson and the SG-1 team was like, why aren't you getting involved here? well, now we get a reason for that, and it makes sense in the context of what they presented with regards to the Ori and these other ascended beings. So I thought that all of that was really good. I thought it came together really well. There's other things, but those are the things that really stuck out to me. What about you? What did you like about this episode?
Very similar notes about the things that I like from this episode. This is one of my favorite episodes for all the reasons that you just expressed. I love having the two teams together. I love all the brain power and the collegiality and the character interactions. This one, like so many of our favorites, has a great opening. Once again, we are fully oriented as to what's going to happen in the episode, as well as we get to see some really fun character development, all in this very short little opening package. We get to see Vala, who's a new character in season 9 and 10. Though I think we did see her in season 8, and she was brought back for season 9 and then became a regular in season 10. And we get to see her figuring out how to sort of mesh with the team after coming in from a very skewed angle as a kind of a con artist and a thief, and being slowly brought into this team. And so this is one of those themes that kind of shows you how she's being incorporated into the team one step at a time. We get to see Mitchell messing with Daniel, who's asleep, and putting some kind of his napkin in his ear to wake him up. It's just a fun little opening, but it tells you so much. I think that's such good writing when you use such small amount of time to communicate so much information on so many levels. Like you, I really enjoyed the A and B story. And I'd be real interested here to see what you think is the A story and what you think is the B story.
Yeah, well, for me, the A story was the Ori, shutting that down. With the B story being Daniel Jackson and Vala trying to figure out what they needed to from the ancients for the location of the planet with this weapon on that they referred to, which I don't know what that was because I haven't rewatched those episodes up to this point yet. But there's some ancient weapon apparently that was made, which will somehow impact ascended beings, I think. Anyway, that seemed like the B story to me.
I agree. I think that was it too. And I think both of these stories, as we've talked about before, both of these stories probably would not have done well alone if we had only seen the attempt to close the Supergate in the Milky Way, or if we had only seen Daniel and Vala trying to figure out where the Sangreal is. I think it was smart to merge both of these stories together, because then it kept the pace moving very quickly, and the pace was awesome. I mean, every single scene moved you right along into the story.
Yeah, I think that they did that really, really well, going back and forth between them. Also, they're both kind of progressing toward the same result, right? The A story in this one is this immediate problem that we're trying to solve with the Ori by shutting off this gate so they can't send an armada in here. And then you have the B story, which is sort of the longer view of how do we deal with these guys once and for all long term? What can we use against them as a weapon? So they're both going to the same direction, but they were definitely separate, but they overlaid the locations really well because it was there. It was on Atlantis. They used that location so well in setting up the two stories. It was great. I thought it was.
I agree. And like you, the mid-story twists of discovering the Wraith are coming after the Odyssey and discovering that the holographic interface is actually Morgan Le Fay, ascended being, was brilliant, because all of a sudden the stories just take a hard right turn. And I love that. You think, oh, we're going to go and we're going to do this and it's a science experiment. No, now you're actually running from the Wraith and you've got to save yourself from the Wraith, and it's no longer a science experiment. And oh, we're going to search the database and find that information. And all of a sudden, no, you're actually going to try to negotiate with an ascended being to try to get information. Fascinating. And then the final thing that I really enjoyed about this was how each storyline's ending was either the payoff, and that was story A. We got the payoff of got the wormhole to work. They activated the Supergate so that no more Ori ships could come in. And oh, by the way, at the same time, they destroyed an Ori ship and a Wraith ship. Payoff was huge for that. But story B's ending was, there was no happy ending with story B. Instead, it was, okay, we have to find something else.
Yes.
It's, we have to continue this journey, as you were talking about, to find the ultimate solution to the Ori problem. And so I thought that was brilliant, giving us this really great payoff, and also, we have to stay engaged to find out what happens next.
Very good setup. And it wasn't like, answer is here on this planet, right? It's, well, check out these 2 planets and maybe you'll find something. So we don't even really know where that's going necessarily.
Exactly.
What do you think could be improved about this episode?
I have nothing. I have nothing. I thought everything was good.
What's funny about that is I asked you that question because I didn't have anything and I was hoping I could riff off of what you said.
All right. I will say one thing. I'll say one thing.
Okay.
And it's such a small thing that is barely talk about. One of my favorite characters in the entire Stargate universe is Rodney McKay, because he starts off in Stargate. We see him in a couple of episodes of Stargate SG1, and then he becomes a series regular. He is a series star for Atlantis, and he has the most wonderful character arc, from narcissistic and self-involved to truly heroic by the end of the Atlantis series. And when we see him in this episode, he is still in his narcissistic mode, though he's slowly coming out of it. But he's still, a bit of a jerk.
Yeah, unique character, very well written and well acted.
Yes, exactly. So I would say the only thing that I think kind of bothered me a little bit was that his jerkiness was a little overplayed in this episode. It seemed more in your face than it has in the previous Stargate SG1 episodes, and for where he was in his character development in Atlantis. I think when this story takes place, it's season 2 of Atlantis. And he'd already had some really important character moments throughout season 1. So that's it. That is so small. It's like barely worth mentioning because it doesn't slow down the episode at all. And it doesn't impact how the episode goes. So it's almost not worth mentioning.
That's an interesting note, though. I wonder if part of that is different writing crews between SG1 and Atlantis.
Maybe.
And the SG1 writers kind of wrote him as they last saw him in their world. I don't know. I'm just making that up. I have no idea if that's true at all.
I don't either, but that's a good thought, and it would explain a lot. And again, we're talking about something that is, a millimeter next to a mile of a good story.
Yeah, I was just engaged in the episode, enjoying it play out, and I didn't. Yeah, my super critical hat wasn't really on because they caught me and I was along for the ride.
Yep, which is the sign of great storytelling.
Yeah, exactly.
So, what rating would you give this one?
I'd give it a 9. I think it wasn't as thrilling as some of the other highs that we talked about. But like I said, it was very engaging. It gave us some really cool world building background. Together, not only multiple storylines and ideas, but also connected it to Stargate Atlantis. I thought it was great.
And I'm right there with you. Solid 9. Next up is a least favorite episode of Stargate SG1 Season 10, Uninvited. And I will read the synopsis of this episode from the Stargate Fandom Wiki. Mysterious creatures attack several villagers on a couple of random planets SG teams visit. Soon they realize that it is their fault, as the parasites are created by the Sodan invisibility devices. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Colonel Cameron Mitchell and Major General Henry Landry find a group of dead hunters in the forest. So what did you like about this episode?
This obviously isn't the scale and scope of the Pegasus Project, which we just talked about, but I think it has a cool idea, which do a good job of unveiling as the story goes. First, you don't really know what's happening. Okay, there's just some monster, right? Some creature on this other planet where it's not expected, some predator attacking them, and then you slowly realize what's going on over the course of the episode. And I think they did that pretty well. I like how the people on the other planet were struggling, and then Teal'c just takes it out immediately as soon as he sees it. He's just, all right, it's done. I thought that was funny. I actually thought it had some good humor throughout. The whistling duck was funny, and then especially the banter at the poker game at the end. I thought that was very entertaining. I like how they connected the two seemingly separate storylines. They seem completely disconnected, right, at the start of the episode, and then you realize, oh wait, something's going on here where these are the same. So I like how they made those come together. I thought they did that pretty well. And then I like how they did an expansion on different ideas from previous episodes again. So they had this stealth device, the cloaking type device, combining that with another episode that we had talked about earlier where they could see these beings from another dimension. So they took both of those ideas and merged them into this new thing with this parasitic creature that comes from the other dimension as a result of the radiation given off by the stealth device. I thought that was pretty cool. I thought that was a nice idea. It was pretty good, actually. There was some interesting things happening. I have issues with it, but the idea was good. How about you? What did you like about this episode?
I liked the idea of taking us as the viewer outside the SGC for some relationship building. You know, we never saw General Hammond do this. We did see Colonel O'Neill try to do this on a couple of occasions with taking people fishing. And once Teal'c went, and it was funny because Teal'c kept getting bitten by mosquitoes and he didn't want to be there. So it was used as sort of a point of humor. And this is the first time, I believe, I can't remember any other episodes where this kind of thing happened. If any of our listeners know of episodes where this happened, please drop that in the comments below. So I kind of liked that. I liked this idea of bringing the team together outside to relax. I also love Vala. I think she's a fantastic character. She's like my second favorite character next to Rodney McKay, because she too has a wonderful arc. And she's always full of surprises. Yes, she's annoying. Yes, she talks too much. Yes, you can't trust her. And boy, does she have a lot of knowledge that she's willing to share. And she's frequently right about a lot of things, even though they don't take her seriously. One of the things that I actually feel uncomfortable about with this episode, one of the things I don't like about it, is how awkward Mitchell is with Landry. It's painful. And vice versa. But when they go out hunting the creature, all of a sudden they're bonding. This is where it works for them. And I enjoyed that when we finally got to see sort of connection made between these two people. I'm very, very grateful that this story it's a monster story. And it's a monster story with a lot of deaths. And I really appreciated that they didn't spend a lot of time on the gruesomeness of the deaths. It was clear that they were gruesome deaths, but we didn't stay there with the camera, with descriptions of what was happening. It was just, yes, this is bad. This is a terrible creature. Gruesome. Okay. And then we would move on to the mystery of it as opposed to staying with the horror of it. So I really appreciated that. And like you, I loved the poker game at the end. It was a lot of fun. That particular those interactions were exactly what I was hoping for when first watching this as this sort of outside of this SGC relationship building kind of thing.
Yeah, they sort of give us that reward at the end, right?
Yes.
It's exactly what you're hoping. Like, okay, good. We get to see them cutting loose, just relaxing outside of the SG. And I like that it was at O'Neill's cabin, too. It's like, oh, hey, we'll use this place.
Yeah.
That was funny. I agree with you also with Vala. You're right. As I was watching, I was thinking, like, why aren't they listening to her at all? Like, she's right about a lot of this stuff. She has a lot of experience. She's been surviving on her own out there in the wild. Give her some more credit. I also agree with you regarding the deaths that happened. I feel like modern shows, they would emphasize the gore more. It's like, oh, look, he's all ripped to pieces, and they showed it to us and it was like, okay, they're dead. And then when the next one came around, you just kind of see the guy's arm bloody and that was it. I thought that was a better way of doing it as well. I don't need to see that. We get the idea. So yeah, I agree with that.
So what do you think could be improved?
I thought earlier in the episode, some of the conversations between Mitchell and Landry seemed kind of unnecessary, like they were just filling space. One of them was, "Oh, it's your job to keep SG1 together." It's like, well, obviously that was his job. You need to tell him that. Like, I mean, that was his whole motivation and goal for coming there, and like he's the last person you need to say that to. So I thought like a couple of the conversations they had were a little sort of unnecessary there. I think they could have done some more or made it more intentionally awkward or something. I don't know. Like they were struggling for what to say. I think their reactions were good. I just think writing wise, I don't know, it could have been more pertinent or something. I wish at the end when they were hunting the beast, they could have done something more clever to deal with it. Even Vala's idea, she had an idea and it's like, okay, why aren't you listening to that idea? Instead, it was just they hunt it down and shoot it. I was kind of disappointed with that. It seemed like the path of least resistance in terms of writing. Like I want to see something a little more clever. Yeah, why don't you dig a hole? Why not? I mean, something. Come up with a trap. Something more interesting than what they did. I thought that was a little bit of a letdown at the end. The pacing felt a little bit off at points. I think most of that, to me, again, was probably the conversations had earlier on with Mitchell and Landry. I appreciate what they were doing there, but I just felt that part felt a little bit off to me until, like you said, until they started going hunting, until the two storylines kind of converged. And then I thought it played out, like evolution of the relationship played out pretty well. What would you improve in this episode?
I think the biggest thing that could bear some closer scrutiny is Landry's character. I'm not sure I have a real good read on his character, especially after this episode. You know, I think I know who he is when he's serving as the general and he's in the SGC. But here he's one minute he's hot, the next minute he's cold. You don't know what to expect from him. If he was my boss, I would be having a nervous breakdown because I wouldn't know what he wanted from me. Because he's like, relax, but don't relax that much. And be yourself, but don't be yourself that much. It's just...
That's true.
And that, I think, to me, reflects, I think it's sort of a lack of understanding of who the character is and what his purpose is in the story and how he's going to react to different things in the story and his people as a leader. And so to me, that just sort of felt undeveloped. And because it was underdeveloped, it made, like you said, the interactions between the characters feel not quite right, not genuine, not natural, not organic. I think that was the biggest issue that I had. And then, you know, we've talked about this before. I'm not really crazy about the hunting the deadly monster genre, though that would have been okay had these other interactions made it worth it. And they kind of didn't for me.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So here's a question for you. Would this story have been helped with a B story?
I kind of thought that. I kind of thought that's where they were going, right? They had like that Mitchell and Landry were sort of the B story on Earth, and they had the A story on the other planet. But then the A story on the other planet got resolved very quickly. So I was like, "What is this going now?" Then I realized, oh, they must be bringing these together, which obviously that's what they did. Yeah, I don't know. I think if they had tried to do a B story, it may have been too much going on. Yeah, I don't know.
Maybe what would have been helpful is to take the Landry and Mitchell B story and make that truly the comedic relief to the more gruesome, scary A story. Instead of having the hunters be killed and have the story come to its climax right there outside of O'Neill's cabin, maybe just kept them, they're trapped there because of the weather. No one can get in, no one can get out. There's no electricity. There's, they have to just figure out how to function together, and really dialed up the humor there. And then use that, like Teal'c going fishing with O'Neill. That was mostly done for comedic elements, and it worked well.
That's an interesting point. It brings up something else that I noted. Tonally, something that didn't hit right for me was the death of Sheriff Wade, where it was like everything's under control. You're going to be fine. Don't worry about it. And then he immediately gets attacked by the creature.
Yeah.
It seemed like that was played for like a joke. It wasn't. It didn't match the tone of the story, and it's like he just killed this guy. I don't know. It wasn't that kind of story.
Yeah.
Yeah, it felt incongruous and definitely gratuitous. That didn't really land for me. But like you said, if there had been more humor in their story, and then they'd done something else with that, like have the thing come and crash and like smash his truck and not kill him, then I think it would have worked better.
So what rating would you give this one?
I think I'd give it a 6. It was entertaining enough. I would watch it again. I liked how they brought other elements to bear, figured out what was going on. Just think it missed a few of the notes that we talked about.
And I would also give it a 6. I would watch this over Collateral Damage or The Light or One False Step. So yeah, 6 I think is a good one.
And not bad for one of the lower rated episodes for this season.
Right? So this brings us to the end of our looking at the stories told in every season of Stargate SG1. And I wanted to know what you thought of the series overall as we come to the end of this.
Looking back at the highs and the lows, and then having watched some in-between episodes as we've progressed, I think Stargate SG1 is a great series. Yeah, there are a few low points, episodes that we probably wouldn't want to watch again, but not many. I think most of them, even like some of the ones that we counted as lows in some of the later seasons, were still fine episodes. They just, didn't hit the highs of the highs. But overall, I thought they had some great concepts, excellent characters, good humor throughout the series, wonderful storylines. I think this is one of the better science fiction shows, and kudos to the team for developing all of this off of one movie. I think they did a great job, and we got 2 spin-offs actually, although only one of those was really successful with Atlantis. Yeah, I'm impressed. Even watching it again all these years later, I think a lot of it still holds up very well. How about you? What is your take on it at the end of the day?
I agree. I think it is one of my top favorite science fiction shows. It's a show I go back to all the time. And, there are a few shows like that, Star Trek Deep Space Nine, Star Trek Voyager, and Stargate SG1 that I'll go back to whenever I'm just looking for something fun, comfort watching, if that is the right phrase, something fun that I know that I'm comfortable with, that I enjoy. And I always actually pick up something new as I watch these because they're that well done. I agree. We may have found least favorite episodes in each one of the seasons, but even those episodes aren't that bad. And every series has episodes that don't hit the right notes and don't quite do what they need to do. And that's okay. It's part of the evolution of a series. And I think that's just fine. So yeah, I agree. I think this is one of the better, if not one of the best. I'm not sure I'd put it above Star Trek, but I put it right up there with it. Science fiction series that has been made, and it's been a lot of fun to go through and watch all these episodes again.
If you had to give the series as a whole a rating, how would you rate it?
Oh, I would give it a 9 or a 10 as a whole.
I think I'm there with you. I'd probably give it a 9. It's really well done. A lot of cool science fiction ideas too. It's not just an action adventure story or something like that. I think it do a good job of carrying on a sort of Star Trek science fiction ideas, where they'll have individual episodes where they'll just explore one idea, in addition to having, a threaded storyline where they're dealing with global threats like the Gold or Replicators or Ori. Yeah, I thought it was a great series.
Thank you for joining us as we talked about the stories told in a most and least favorite episode of Stargate SG1 Season 10. A big thank you to our Patreon supporters. We are so grateful for your support and encouragement. The Stories Told podcast is available on multiple podcast platforms. And we thank you very much for your liking and subscribing or following or thumbs upping, depending on where you are listening. It may not be a big deal to you, but it means a lot to us. You can find Michael Grayford at michaelgrayford.com, and that's the place that you can find the sign up for his newsletter if you're interested in reading Zara in ARC form. And you can find E.W. Barnes at a1000years.com, and those links are in the show notes. Join us next time as we discuss the story told in Dennis E. Taylor's delightful science fiction novel, We Are Legion, We Are Bob. Thanks, Mike. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you. Always enjoyable.
And we'll see you next time on the Stories Told podcast.